Right. Okay. So, ladies and gentlemen, lovely to meet you, and thank you very much for joining us today. This is Sunday to discuss an absolutely amazing and quite fantastic thing, I would say, that is Web 3.0. And my greatest pleasure is to welcome our guest speaker, Vinod Paniker, who is, hi, Vinod. If you say something, you will become
Hello.
larger.
Sure. Can I start sharing my deck and start presenting? Is that okay now?
Just a couple of housekeeping rules, if you don't mind, right?
Sure.
So again, I mean, thank you for joining. You know that you can choose whether you have your camera on, camera off. You can choose what label you put, as your name. There's a session because you're with us. I believe that that's your consent to recording of this session. So thank you very much again. My name is Dr. Santelova. Please call me Tony. I'm the director of the Research Institute at UBIS, and that's my great pleasure and honor. So housekeeping, please let us keep our mics off. That would provide good quality of the sound. And if we have any questions, please do not forget that you can use those reactions at the bottom of your screen and put your hand up or type actual question into the chat box. And it's not yet. And today we are going to have the third option that Vinod actually suggested, but he's going to tell himself more. So Vinod is an expert in the internet, I would say so, if you don't mind. And even his profession, his position sounds absolutely fascinating, like from the future already. He's the chief platform officer at the company Paceline. So Vinod, the floor is yours. Tell us as much as you like about this fascinating Paceline company. I'm very interested in learning more about it. And of course, tell us the future. Tell us what to expect with the internet. So that would be a great pleasure to learn more from you. So
Thank you, Dr. Tony.
The floor is yours.
Thank you, Dr. Tony. Let me start by sharing my deck. Let me know if you guys can see. Can you guys see my deck?
Yes, we can.
Perfect. So, Tony, you said show us the future. I wish I had a crystal ball. Unfortunately, no. But I will do my best to share. It's a very interesting topic, Web 3.0, the next evolution of the internet. The topic is evolving every day, it's changing. There are new things. There is no one definition of what is Web 3.0. I will do my best to do as much justice to this topic. You guys might be curious what this picture of a cat and a Pop-Tart and rainbow is here. I consciously chose this image just to give you guys a preview of what's coming. So this is called Nyan Cat. It is actually in 2011, there was a YouTube video that was created by a meme artist and uploaded to the YouTube, and it went crazy. It was like the 5th most viewed YouTube video in 2011. And that's not where it ends. In 2021, I think around Feb, I think, the same artist on the 10th anniversary of that video, he created an animated GIF. And Chris Torres, if I remember his name, and he sold it as an NFT, put it for sale, and it was sold for almost like $600,000, just over $500,000. So that's the world we are living in. Like, you create memes, you can create an NFT, you can sell it for millions of dollars, and it is all real. So my job is here to give you guys a quick overview of the whole Web 3.0 world. Before I jump into that, quick introduction about me. Like, Dr. Tony did say I work for a company. It's called Paceline. I'm the chief platform officer, the chief technology officer of Paceline. What do we do, right? So it's one of the unique, I've been in like financial services for 20 plus years. Our focus is connecting financial services with physical wellness and health and wellness. The mission of our company where I work is to change the nature of preventive health in society at scale. What does that mean is we are trying to nudge people, nudge users to stay active, stay physically fit, like go out for a run or a walk, or like, focus on your mental health, your physical health, and your well-being, which will automatically give a much positive health outcome over a period of time, and which is great for the overall society. We strongly believe in that. And so we are trying different hypotheses how to make that mission and the vision into a reality. So that's where Baseline is. And if you guys have more questions, happy to answer, talk about it. I just want to mention a big thanks to my two kids, my dog. I have a rabbit, Himalayan rabbit called Winston, and my wife, Manisha, who always supports me in my journey, whether it's Web 3.0 or like Web X.0, I know they are always with me. So that's always good to call out and highlight them in all my presentations. I always do that. So if you guys ever want to connect with me, you can always email me, or my Twitter handle is at Vinod. Before I jump in, I know Dr. Tony said we have one more way to interact and be connected with me today. If you guys want to use your quick smartphone, scan this QR code, or you can go to slido.com and enter the number 747-417, and you can participate in some polls that I'm going to conduct, or ask Q&As, questions through that, and I'm more than happy to answer. I mean, others can also ask questions, and you can have thumbs up, thumbs down, vote the questions, so you know what the most popular questions are. Anyway, we'll see more of that later today. So before, again, I jump straight into the presentation, just a couple of things, right? So we have a lot of diverse people here from different backgrounds, experience throughout the world. My job is to just give an overview of what is Web 3.0, get you curious, and trust me, there'll be a lot more folks out here who might be much, much more qualified and knowledgeable than me. But the whole idea is, let's have a dialogue, let's exchange ideas, let's talk about it, ask questions. So feel free to stop me anytime and ask questions. I want it to be interactive. You can use the Slido, you can use the Zoom Q&A, any sessions. But the idea is to learn from each other, because the next world where you're going to enter into, the 3.0, it's evolving, it's changing, it's every day there's a new definition. So we need to help each other to learn and understand that. I hope that's clear. Any questions so far? Nope. Okay. So let's go into the quick agenda. So I'll go through the evolution of the web first. Walk you through what was 1.0, what is 2.0, where are we headed towards in 3.0, and then focus on specifically the future of the web, the evolution, where it's going 3.0. Talk about a few of these technologies like blockchain, smart contract, crypto, DeFi, DAO, NFT. And then specifically, since my background has been financial services, I can do a little bit more deep dive into use cases, how things are going to evolve in the future, and then we can have it, at least 40, 45 minutes of Q&A. So if you guys don't mind, I would really recommend you guys to start using your phone. And if you can go to slido.com or this QR code, there is the first poll. What is the first word that comes to mind when you hear Web 3.0? I want all of you guys to use the start sending your response. Looks like crypto. Multiple folks have said crypto. Can you guys see the screen?
Yes.
And can you guys see the crypto word, like, what trending, or like, can you guys see the responses showing?
All is fascinating. We see that in the screen, in the slide, as well as on our gadgets. So yeah.
Okay, good. I just want to make sure.
Although there are not that many words, yes, guys, take your time. So just scan.
Take your time. I just want to, future, crypto, NFT, blockchain, fantasy, fiction. Interesting choice of words. Yeah, that's good.
And we have Vertial from Marita in the chat box.
Sorry, what was the word?
Vertial.
Oh, okay, nice. Yeah, yeah. Excellent. That's good. That's good. I'm getting few virtual, great choice of words. Okay. So let's move forward. The whole idea is I just want to get to know what a lot of people have different ideas. So if you guys have, this is just, oh, somebody put trustless transaction. That's a very deeper, geekier word. That's good. I mean, I understand what exactly that means. Speed, 5G, fiction. Good. So let's move on to the actual Web 1.0, right? So what was Web 1.0? This is the, people who have been, I'm dating myself, like, grew up in the 1990s. And when the internet was pretty new, so most of the web pages were static. People were using it for publishing news. There was Netscape, couple of browsers, Yahoo, Alta Vista. So it was, static content there. There was only no graphical, not too much of images, graphics. But it was all about consuming content, like, users could search results, but all text-based, right? So that was the 1.0 world, or the Web 1.0 as we call it. As compared to that, where we are living today is Web 2.0. Now, what is Web 2.0 is where all these big giant tech companies like Facebook, Meta, and Google, and Microsoft, Amazon, all these guys, big tech companies, control majority of the web infrastructure, as I call it. And like they have all these web properties like Instagram and Facebook and Twitter. The users are creating content. You and me, the people, we are creating content, but how we distribute it and how it reaches to the other people are controlled by these intermediaries, like the third companies. So this is the world in which where we are living. There's a lot of challenges here in terms of the middleman trying to make money, in terms of privacy, in terms of security, in terms of like not too much efficiency in the whole ecosystem. That's where the world is today in terms of Web 2.0. Now, 2.0, what that primarily focused on is experience, like like fancy look and feel, like nice rich interface of the Instagrams, and the Facebook brought in the scrolling feed, and like so all the front end look and feel, touch, what that revolution was done by the Web 2.0. Web 3.0 is all behind the scene, the back end, as we call it in the engineering or the technical term. That is, most users might not see it, couldn't touch and feel. That's why it's a little bit more abstract. But the behind the scene, how things work in the infrastructure, that revolution is what 3.0 is. I'll go a little bit more deeper into it. So most of the applications that Web 3.0 will be using certain technologies that I'm going to mention, but I will explain a little bit more detail into it later, like blockchain and AI, ML, and crypto, NFTs and metaverses. All these terms that you hear combined together is called Web 3.0. But the fundamental principle is decentralization. And actually, these are the characteristic of Web 3.0 is verifiable. Now, what does verifiable mean is every transaction that happens on the web or on 3.0 block is on the blockchain. It's immutable. That is, you cannot delete it, you cannot edit it. Once the transaction is done, it's done. There is no, even if it's a mistake, you cannot correct it. You can make a new transaction, but you cannot like edit it or change it. It's trustless. I know somebody did put trustless earlier in the word, is The network will allow all you users, that is all of us, to participate without going through the big trusted intermediaries like Google or Amazon or Facebook or like, if we want to participate into that ecosystem, we can go directly without any intermediaries. That is like, without a trusted intermediary. It's decentralized. What does that mean is there is no one central governing body that is authorizing it, right? There are like, it's more of there are multiple nodes in the network or throughout the world that is spread across, and every user can vote and have a voice in that ecosystem, and that's decentralized. There's no one central governing authority. It's permissionless, again, that anybody can participate in without authorization. Like, it's not that, hey, you need to have a driver's license, you need to have a social security number, you need to have some kind of an ID to participate in this. That's not what the world is. It's permissionless, that anybody can participate. And most of these things, the infrastructure is built on open source. So to summarize it, the key focus is on transparency, consensus, that is, everybody has a voice, they can vote towards it. It's irrevocability, that is, once you make a transaction, you cannot change it. You can add new transactions, but you cannot change it. Decentralization. And I think one of the biggest focus is equitable payment for participants, that everybody gets rewarded for participating in this. It's not like the few big tech companies can, make money out of it, but everybody does. I'm going to pause here for a few seconds and see if there are any questions, comments from any participants. Any questions? Let me look at the chat.
Don't worry.
Yeah.
I keep an eye on the chat box, so you just keep going. I mean, usually we have questions at the end, so I think that's the format.
Sounds good. Sounds good. So just to show you this, I borrowed this from Fabric Ventures. If you look at this trend, how the world is progressing, from 1990, when Web 1.0 took place, primary was e-commerce was a big focus, desktop was the big focus, dedicated infrastructure, like, was a big focus, data centers. Then when Web 2.0 came, it was all gone to cloud, or like, the cloud-driven infrastructure, mobile first, social network. And as we are going towards Web 3.0, there's a decentralized data architecture that is, even though data is probably on the edge network and the computer infrastructure. So there are a lot more newer companies that will evolve. I just want to make sure you guys understand that this is not yet settled, like what exactly Web 3.0 is, which are the main dominant companies. It is evolving every day. Every day things are changing. There are new companies trying to figure out how to build on the principles that I spoke previously. Like, how do you make it verifiable? How do you make trustless? How do you make decentralized? How do you bring in transparency? These principles, there are companies coming up and trying to evolve every day in that area, and there are new companies evolving. So if any of you guys are interested, this is your opportunity to participate in the next evolving technology. I would recommend all of you to learn more, dive deeper, understand it, because the how. Recently I was in India, and my parents were in their 80s. They are always on WhatsApp, they're chatting. I was pretty thrilled to see that, like, hey, you know what, they're still able to use technology, but I can still see they struggle with the fundamentals of internet, like, hey, how do you download, how do you like click on certain links, and they can also get caught on spams and hackers trying to spam them. So the idea is, as we are getting into this new age, it's good to understand the basics and understand the whole infrastructure, so you are aware of it, So if there is an evolution of a next generation technology or a feature or a service that has been launched, you can be in the forefront to learn that and get on top of that. That is the whole idea of getting to learn about these right now. Okay, so the next poll, quick, before I jump into blockchain. So a question for you guys, right? Have you heard of blockchain? I got 2 responses so far. One person said never heard. The other person said, I think I know what it is, knows it very well. Oh, it's interesting. Okay, different. So I'm hoping 5 people participated. Good, excellent. Let's give people a few minutes. I think I know what it is. Yeah, I think that's good. Good to know. About 45% says they know somewhat what it is. 27% says I know it very well. That's good. 9% never heard of it. Any more responses? Okay, let's give 55%. I think I know what it is. That's awesome. So we can all learn a little bit more about it. Sorry, Dr. Tony, you were saying something?
Yes, Vinod, in the chat we have yes, I do, and heard of it, and only heard but do not know what it is, and yes, and I know of it. Family member is highly active.
Okay, cool. So what is blockchain? So just to explain, I'll probably use, and I have a visual so that I can walk you through what exactly blockchain is. It's a distributed ledger. That means there are more than a ledger is a book or a record where you keep record for record keeping. It's distributed ledger. The ledger is spread across multiple locations, and it stores data, specifically of transactions of peer-to-peer. Let's say I give Tony, I want to give Tony a digital asset or some or an NFT or a Bitcoin or a block. That transaction will be recorded in this blockchain network, in this distributed ledger. And the data is stored and it's verified by multiple nodes in the network. So a blockchain has multiple people participating in that whole network, and those, each of them are called a node. So let me explain, spend a few minutes just telling what exactly it is, right? So most people get confused about blockchain associated with cryptocurrencies. While blockchain has become synonymous with Bitcoin, it is not the only blockchain. At the foundation layer of Web3, there are numerous blockchain designs and have multiple different purposes. But one of the primary use case of blockchain, of why it became popular, is through cryptocurrencies or Bitcoin. But so again, key attributes of blockchain is it's distributed. That is, you can imagine, like if you are going to a bank and withdrawing money, that transaction is documented in the bank's ledger. But in this case, it's distributed throughout the world in multiple nodes in the network. So it's distributed. It's global. That is, if you, as compared to a transaction done in a particular bank or a financial institution, it's localized to them. Here, it means you can connect via internet to anybody in that in that network. It's very, yes, there are problems, but it's very, very secure, I would say, as compared to a normal transaction or a normal network. And primarily, its security is through transparency, that everybody else can see what is being logged in that transaction. Like I said earlier, it's immutable. That is, you cannot edit, you cannot change it. And it's always on. It's 24/7. Unlike a bank which works 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, or in a particular working hours, it's 24/7 available. So settlements can happen real time in 24/7. Let me actually, this is a visual that I got from, I think the website is given here, Blog Geeks. So going back to the previous example, let's say someone requests a transaction, say, hey, I need to give me like selling an NFT or like, any kind of transaction, financial transaction, that is broadcasted over a peer-to-peer network. That is, into a network it goes. And like you're seeing here, there are multiple computers in the network. There are like thousands and thousands of computers. P2P network consisting of computers known as nodes. They first validate that, hey, is it a valid request? And since there are multiple nodes validating it, it's very difficult to hack into it or break into it. And so if it is verified, saying that, yes, it's a valid request, then that transaction is recorded and said, hey, okay, Vinod requested, Vinod is sending Tony XYZ, or that transaction is logged. And that gets added as a part of that blockchain or the chain of the network. And that's how it gets completed, right? So there are a lot more nuances to it. I just want to give some examples of what is the primary use case or how we can use it, right? Like I said, cross-border transactions. Say today, if I want to send money to somebody in South Africa or India or somewhere, cross-border transaction, there are so many hoops I have to jump. I had to go to a bank. There are intermediate, although it has become easier, convenient using a mobile phone, you just click a few buttons, it happens. But behind the scene, there are multiple stops it goes or hops it does. You can completely get rid of all those, and it can be literally peer-to-peer, like, between two folks, you can transfer it for transactions. Governments can use blockchain for identifying users. Like for example, in the US, we have social security number to identify users, but you can use that blockchain technology, same thing, for identifying how people to do ID verification. I know there are countries and even actually counties in US where real estate or property or land ownership is tracked and traced through blockchain, so that nobody can steal or do a land grab. Or like, hey, government, somebody cannot take away your grab, because once the transaction is recorded that this person owns this property or this parcel of land, that can be there. Then blockchain is also, so there are multiple use cases where it is bringing in efficiency, getting rid of the middleman, and bringing more security and transparency to the entire transaction, right? For another use case that I'm aware of is, like, let's say in shipping, when you transport goods from one place to the other, like earlier, there is documentation, papers being handed over from one place to other. They have to verify that it is correct, that the challan or the documentation is correct and valid. Then the payment gets done. Now it's all through this, that immediately, real time, it can be done, right? The verifying and the transfer of money, that, hey, I received the goods, then and there, you can, like, through smart contracts, and I will go into what is smart contract, it can be triggered and payments can be made. So there's a lot of efficiency that blockchain can bring in. Also copyright protection, right? Like if there is a digital asset or any kind of asset, we can figure out how to make it copyright through blockchain network and protect the copyright for the users. So let's go into the next big technology, that is smart contract. Now, I did speak briefly about it. So what is a smart contract? Like I said, like, hey, I'm giving Tony something, like, a transaction that gets logged into the blockchain network. But today what happens is there's a contract. Let's say, hey, I am buying an iPhone, and I gave the iPhone to Tony, and Tony is giving me the money back for that. There is a contract that, hey, you know what, this when I hand over the phone, I will get the payment. That can be coded into the system so that we don't need to pay attorneys and the legal authorities in between to codify the contract. The whole idea is that the exchange of value, when that happens, you can write it in code that, hey, if you fulfill a proper condition, that can trigger off the payment automatically. Let's talk about the same shipping example I gave, right? If the goods was delivered and if it is verified, immediately that payment can be triggered without any other legal contract or verification, because it's done through smart contracts, right? So it's very, very helpful in bringing in efficiency through international trades, primarily increasing trust and transparency in the whole network. In terms of savings, smart contracts can remove the need for intermediaries to handle transactions, and it can also avoid people trying to fraud or scam by getting rid of the middleman in between, right? That adds a lot more trust and transparency into the whole ecosystem. So that's what is smart contract. And I can, again, a visual, this is from a report that I found very interesting, Money 2020's Web3 report, where traditionally, this is what a buyer and a seller, if you go through lawyers, brokers, insurance, like if you're buying a property, there's an escrow, a company in between, there's an agent. You can get rid of all that because that rule of that exchange of value is written code as law, right? So it's all written in smart contracts. And that's how the exchange of value can happen between the buyer and the seller. So some of the characteristics of smart contract, it's autonomous, can be run without any human intervention, right? That is the whole idea, that there's no person involved. It is a code. It's not biased. It's honest. It's decentralized. It's direct. It's equitable, and it's revenue generating, right? I mean, these are the characteristics of a smart contract. Now, going to the next topic of everybody's favorite, cryptocurrencies. So it's a medium of exchange. It's digital, it's encrypted, it's decentralized, recorded on blockchain. So we heard about blockchain, we heard about smart contract. Cryptocurrency uses blockchain to record those transactions. So the currency that we use today, the fiat currency, is different from crypto. So what are the biggest differences? The fiat currency is controlled by the bank or the government. There is some kind of an authority behind it controlling the value, who is managing and maintaining the value of that currency. In case of crypto, that is not there at all, right? It is the people, it is the ecosystem, it's everybody participating in that market is what is determining the value. The transaction that happen is logged into blockchain, so it's very, very transparent. It's secure. It's decentralized. People can see it. Am I in favor? I just want to give you my personal take on crypto. Is actually, the next slide will probably tell you. This is, I think I created this from this morning's value. I just took it from Google Finance, the comparing of Ether, that is Ethereum, and Bitcoin. From day one, it has went up 17,000%. Ethereum and Bitcoin is 9,000%. Overall looks great, but it's high risk for the common man. I would, being a little bit conservative person, I would say don't get into it unless you know the fundamentals, unless you understand what you're doing. There's a heavy risk of losing money. You can see how the value keeps fluctuating up and down, unless it's like a play money that you're trying to dabble into it, and you understand the risk and you're okay with the risk. I think, and you shouldn't get into it without that. So I want to make sure that you guys are aware of the risk of cryptocurrencies. then the difference, again, this is just a visual presentation that I thought was good to explain between a regular fiat currency and a Bitcoin, right? So, like I said, um, fiat currency, there is issued by a government, there is a central bank or an authority that is controlling and managing the currency. There is always an intermediary in between to do the transactions and the exchange. Chargeback is possible in a regular currency. If you make a mistake, you can cancel the transaction. The bank can do it. The authorities can do it. Typically, the settlement takes multiple days. I mean, if you are familiar with stock trading, if you do buy a stock, it takes, like, even in US, it takes about 3 days to settle. And so it takes some time to do the transaction and settling of the money. Whereas Bitcoin, it's real time. Like I said, it's distributed. There is no one major governing authority. It's based on consensus. Everybody in the network or the ecosystem has a voice in governing that. So these are the big differences between a fiat money and a Bitcoin or a cryptocurrency. I use Bitcoin, but it's the same. The principles are the same for any of the digital currencies. Let me go and talk about what is DeFi. So decentralized finance is an emerging financial technology based on the same distributed ledger. The system removes the control banks and institutions have on money and financial products. That is, like I said, the middleman or the banks and the authorities, they have no say in these financial products. They are all we use smart contracts on a blockchain, and so there's no person or people involved in this whole financial ecosystem. The advantages, like I said, again, it eliminates fees, brokerage fees. You hold your money in a digital wallet instead of keeping it in a bank, and anybody with an internet connection can use it. You can transfer cross-border, international, the money can be transferred within a few seconds or minutes. That's the whole decentralized finance. Again, a quick visual, in a traditional finance, when you send a money through the bank, it goes to multiple networks like Visa card, Master, Venmo, PayPal, and there is the receiver's bank, and you receive it. This is just a visual representation. It could be American Express. There are so many other network players in between. They control the data. Like American Express, as an example, can say, hey, do you get level 2 or level 3 data of a transaction? And who gets what? They control that whole, the middleman. Whereas in a decentralized financial system, it's just you and the receiver and a bunch of computers in between, and the rules are all codified in smart contracts, and so that there's no other people involved in between. The next topic I wanted to quickly cover is DAO. DAO stands for Decentralized Autonomous Organization. Now, what is a DAO? I don't think a lot of people might, it's not a common term. A lot of people might have not heard about it. It's the same concept of decentralized, but in running a company, like typically a company has a CEO, the board of directors are there, CEOs are there, investors are there. There are employees, there is management layer, multiple hierarchies. Now, as compared to that, imagine a DAO where you have completely democratized organizations. All the members, there's no hierarchy there. It's a way of organizing people around the world they don't need to know each other, and establishing your own rules of engagement and making decisions all autonomously, but encoded in a blockchain. So people from any part of the world can come together, form a DAO, work together, and their rules of how they are contributing towards that can be coded in a smart contract. So it's more of a virtual, you can think of a virtual company, and that's what it is. And in fact, in US, I know recently the state of Wyoming now allows DAO LLCs. So you can, it's a limited liability corporation, you can register a company as a DAO, right? So the whole idea is a group of people coming in together in a more democratized way. Everybody will have a voice in it, informing what is the mission of the company, what is the vision of the company, what are they working on. Everybody can have a say in it. That's the whole idea of it now. Next, NFT. This is probably very popular. A lot of you guys know. So the whole idea of NFT stands for like non-fungible tokens. The idea of fungibility is like, just to explain an analogy, right? If a dollar is a dollar, if a dollar bill in my hand is same as a dollar bill in Kathy's hand or somebody, everybody is, that's fine. You can exchange it. It doesn't make sense. It's the same. But if the idea was to create a non-fungible token, it's primarily used nowadays in the whole digital art world, primarily, where you can create a digital asset which cannot be copied. Now, if I have an image or let's say a picture or a JPEG image on the web, anybody can copy and paste it and create more copies of that. And you can easily, the idea of an NFT is you cannot do that. It is unique, and there's only one version of it. That is the whole idea of creating an NFT. So the idea is to prevent copying and replicating it, and create so that there is too much demand for that whole digital asset. So they are usually bought and sold using cryptocurrencies. One of the example, I think this was the most expensive NFT sold, digital artist Park's creation, which sold for like $91.8 million. But there were multiple people who pulled in their money and then bought this NFT. This example, I don't know how many of you guys know about this or have you seen it. This was, I don't remember, it was probably about a year ago, less than a year ago. This NFT was sold for almost $70 million. This was created by an artist. If you zoom in and see, there are 5,000 different arts. It's a collage of 5,000 different, it's the artist, 5,000 days, he created different art, and he created a collage of putting it all together. And then he created an NFT out of it, and it was sold for $69.3 million. This is one of the most expensive NFT done by Beeple, the artist. So there are a lot of such examples in the art world that is coming out, like everybody's creating NFT, and there's numerous examples of NFTs. I primarily find it very hard to believe the value because, again, beauty lies in the eyes of the beholder. Art is something very subjective, but there are collectors allowed to keep something which is unique. And that's exactly what they have done with NFT, creating the demand by making it very unique and you cannot replicate it. So going into the next real life use cases, I know, Tony, I know I'm running out of time, but I'll try to quickly wrap it up. I think I can't hear you. Sorry, probably you're on mute.
I'm saying take your time. It's so interesting.
Okay, cool. So this is, I think finance folks will be interested in this. I think, again, Money 2020 had a good report on this. It gives you a quick summary of how these technologies can be used. that is blockchain, smart contracts, tokens, can be used in the whole banking system or the financial services. In banking, you can use it for KYC and fraud detection or identity management. Smart contracts can start tracking loyalty and rewards, or in the insurance world, the entire claim management, it can use smart contracts, so there is a whole bunch of new world out there in terms of how the Web 3.0 technology can be used in the financial services world. So this is just a quick glimpse of that. I had another, yes. So to simplify it, I want to give you guys an example of banks won't be able to charge transaction fees. Currently there are many banks or financial institutions making money on float. Because transactions can happen in real time, that can go away, right? So there's a lot of such efficiencies that it can bring in the real world. But I want to give you guys the negative side or the cons of Web 3.0 also. That is, if you look at Web 3.0 today, it's more of a combination of a science fiction and a science project, I would say, where it's not for the common man because the UX or the user experience is not pretty. Like I said earlier, it is more focused towards the back-end infrastructure. So they're not started building features and functions for the customers or the retail customers. If you want to become a part of that ecosystem, you have to jump multiple hoops to understand the backend, participate. How do you get a digital wallet, and how do you buy a crypto and get into that ecosystem? There are companies trying to make it easier, but it's still a long way from being good, easily accessible for the common man, right? So I spoke about a DAO, that is decentralized organizations. It sounds great, but think of customer service. There's no customer service desk if you want to do some correction of the transaction, because hey, if you made a mistake, if you want to fix that, it's hard. So those are some of the challenges of the Web 3.0. I would highly recommend you guys to go to this website, web3isgoinggreat.com. It talks about all the negative things about Web 3.0. So like any intellectual discussion, I want to make sure that I give you a balanced approach. What I said is all great, but at the same time, there are a lot of downside and the negative side of Web 3.0. This website is a great resource where you can go and check out all the negative side of Web 3.0. That's all I have. So good. I see that I think some people have put in some questions here. So I will pause here actually, Tony, before we jump into Q&A.
Yeah. Before you start to answer the questions, I suggest that everybody switches on his home mics and give a big round of applause to Vinod. Wonderful presentation. Please, everyone. Thank you so much. That is fascinating.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vinod. We have plenty of questions in the more traditional.
Yep, please go for it. I will do my best. And please make sure, I think there are a lot of people who are knowledgeable here. I want people to collaborate and help me even answer those questions.
Sure. We shall try our best. If you stop sharing, then we have more people. We can see more people. Yeah, that's brilliant. Okay, so if you don't mind, let me first ask people with their hands up, and then I'll go to the chat box and maybe get some questions from there. So ADBC, please go ahead.
Good morning, good afternoon, everyone, depending on where you're at. Thanks, for enlightening us. This is like a really good presentation. And I'm sure, a lot of us have something bothering our mind about the blockchain. For me, majorly is the issue of regulation. So I think one of the value proposition of blockchain was, the fact that any government cannot, just come and see whatever is happening, there. Any government cannot come and see what is happening in the system. But I think that was closed, when there was a particular fraud and the US government was able to locate the people, that did this fraud. That being said, going forward, do you think regulation is going to be, like a thing for blockchain? Do you think at some point there will be need for regulation, to come in, or every Tom, Dick, and Harry can just wake up one day, build their own coin and put it there and, just make money, off it? So what do you think of this stage, basically?
Yeah, happy to answer that. It's very interesting. So I'm in Silicon Valley. I come from startup worlds where we hate regulations, like, on one side, because regulations try to kill innovation. But I've seen the other side where if it's not regulated, most of the common man gets scammed and they lose big time money. There's a lot of fraud in it. So I think it's ultimately my, again, this is totally my speculation, is the whole Bitcoin, blockchain, cryptocurrency world will be regulated, because at the end of the day, the common man has to be protected, and without any regulation, it's very hard. But there are two sides of that. It's very tricky, right? Because there could be some overarching regulations by some governments that can be challenging. Like, again, for example, recently there is a new proposal being done in US to go into digital cash. That is, completely get rid of the physical cash and go into digital currency. People think it's easy, it's convenient, but at the same time, the government can then track each and every currency which is at whose control, and they can even put, again, this I'm totally making it up, right? Like, let's say if the government, to stimulate the economy, the government gives everybody $100, they can say that, hey, this $100 you can only spend for buying vegetables and fruit. They can control that, because if you try to buy something else with that money, it will not be valid. Or they can say that, this currency is only valid in the month of Jan, not in Feb, because it expires. So you have to spend quickly so that you can stimulate the economy. So there are good and bad. My thing is, it has to be a balanced approach. And, at the end of the day, we need to protect the masses. And for that, regulation is a must, I would say. I don't know. I would love to hear if there are others. I know, Kathy, you have been in a regulated environment for a long time. Do you have any take on this?
So I actually think that some of what's happened with the cryptocurrency is a perfect example. With Luna is a perfect example of what happens in an unregulated market. And it really is buyer beware. And so I think where we should move to is sort of the middle of the road, where the government isn't, big brother and monitoring everything I do, but there are rules and regulations that if you go outside those boundaries, you're penalized, because those boundaries protect the common man. As you know, Vinod, I'm very big into protecting the common man. The rich seem to figure it out for themselves. It's the average guy on the street or gal on the street that ends up getting hurt in these things.
Yep, exactly. Any other questions?
Yes, of course. Thank you. Martin, please.
Well, yeah, my question is connected actually to what you've just been saying. Intermediaries add a cost, but they also can be used to protect the customer. A naive customer takes the advice of the intermediary. You use a solicitor because you trust the solicitor to advise you whether the thing you're buying has got legal problems with it or not. So I'm wondering whether in Internet 3.0, there wouldn't be a role for people to come in as peer-to-peer customer advisors. It's like a business opportunity. If the government isn't going to regulate, there must be a market opportunity for people to come in and offer to be customer advisors?
Yeah, very good question. And I think it's a different perspective. I agree that in peer-to-peer setting, the intermediaries are not required. But I strongly believe in intermediaries if they're adding value. Like anytime there is like, somebody in between a transaction, if they're adding value, it makes sense. But in this whole, Web3 environment, intermediaries are not a part of that picture. But it's a pretty interesting point you're making that, hey, so is there a way for somebody else to be like an advisor or some kind of a consultant or advisor governing, helping the common man navigate through that to make sure they are making the right decision? Possibly, I would say possibly. I think there is. It looks interesting. I'm trying to think how to make that work in a Web3 data environment. Maybe it's some kind of a smart contract where the first step is it goes to an intermediary, they validate it, and then the contract gets further down the funnel, I would say. But yeah, definitely possible, I think.
Vinod, I have heard some people talking intellectually about like a law firm saying, well, yes, it'll eliminate work for my firm, but if I become the validator, so that they would say this smart contract is validated by Dalonis, or this smart contract is by Davis Polk. One other thing that I think is a good parallel, and I believe that was Martin that asked the question, is if you look at what Revolut's doing in Europe and around the world, they're trying to become the validator of the digital wallet. So that will end up being cheaper for you to do banking, but it won't go to zero. In other words, Revolut's going to stand between you and your digital wallet and sort of validate it so that you're not just dealing with Vinod in a peer-to-peer transaction, but they'll take a much smaller intermediary fee. Vinod and I both come out of financial services, and banks make most of their money on your float. So this will eliminate and compress that and allow you to make money on your float, but they'll get a transaction fee for facilitating the peer-to-peer payment.
Yeah, and just to add to that, Kathy, the whole fundamental of blockchain, like I said, there are various nodes in the network. Technically, what's happening is each of those nodes, there are miners, as we call it in the technical term. They are mining. And what are they doing? They are verifying that, hey, this is correct. So, and for verifying that whole transaction, actually, there is a very, very, very tiny piece of money they get for that, doing that work. So it's the same concept, but at a micro level, it is happening in the blockchain system also today.
Thank you both. I should say that I'm going to travel to Geneva with my Revolut card, actually.
Oh, nice.
There you go. Wow.
Absolutely. Okay, Mashilo, go ahead.
Thanks, Dr. Tony and the team. Vinod, I want us to look at DAO. You said, according to DAO, a group of people who can come together and form something like a DAO committee. I want to know, one, this group of people should be per state or per city. That's number one. Number two, should they get the permission and from who? Thank you.
So, sorry, what is should they be what? I got the second question. What is the first question?
The first question was, this group of people, should they be gathered per country, like a state, or city, or how? I want to understand how is this being managed globally when you go now into actual implementation sites?
Yeah, so not at all. There is absolutely no restrictions about where they need to come from. It is pretty much anybody in the world with an internet connection can come together and be a part of a DAO. They all agree, they all buy into it. A most common I don't know. Again, there are other terms that I've not used in this presentation, but if you guys are familiar, one of the most other common term in the whole Web 3.0 or in the space is called ICOs. That is initial coins offering, similar to IPOs, where this is the form of raising money to run a company or a product or an idea. And DAOs are usually using ICOs to raise money. So virtually people come together, they form the smart contract, and through ICOs raise money to run companies. That's what it is. You don't need to take any permissions. Again, there are a lot of examples of failed ICOs. This is where, again, we need to have regulations, I would say. You don't need to take permissions. I believe they are trying to do a little bit more, at least in the US, they're trying to govern it so that the common man doesn't lose money in the initial coin offerings. So there is technically no permission required for you to come together, create a DAO, and execute on the mission, vision, creating whatever value you guys want to do. You can do it on your own.
Correct me if I'm wrong. So basically, you can decide to make your baseline as this DAO, right? Like decentralized autonomous organization. And Mashilo and I, we can decide, and anybody on this call can decide that we would like to participate. Okay. And since then on, actually, there is no job for any CEO either, as well as no job for the board of directors whatsoever. So having my computer, having, kind of a share in this DAO, I can just vote. I can say what I want to see, as well as everybody can, right? So that's this kind of very democratic principle, as I can see that.
Exactly, right? So what the company is working on, let's say you want to build a widget and people can vote saying, what should the color be? What should the shape be? What you're building or what you're making or what you're creating, whether digital, virtual, real. As a company, if you want to decide the DAO, it's all about everybody can vote and influence that. They will have a voice to influence that.
But in this regard, Vinod, I have a question in the chat box from Patricia. And Patricia quite fairly mentions that then the quality of or the performance of this DAO will depend a lot on the quality of the members, i.e. the traits, the competences, how well informed, right, the community of this DAO is. So would you agree with that?
Absolutely. Actually, a lot of people, if you guys are familiar, they use Discord, which is a more online chat tool, where most of these guys, they form a community, they talk, but then you're absolutely right, the quality depends on the people in the community. But they can vote each other out also, depending on what kind of contract and construct they have. If somebody is not performing well, or they can say that, hey, if they don't meet these standards, kick them out. Or again, I'm totally making this up in the sense it depends on what kind of agreement they have to come together and contribute to creating value.
Right. Interesting. Thank you. Roberta.
Yes, thank you very much for the presentation so far. I have a question. I don't see if you see me well with the camera because my blinds there.
Good to see you, Roberta.
Good to see you all. So my question is, I was reading this morning, I was reading the newspaper, and I saw an article about a consortium made by Google, Apple, Microsoft, and all big five companies, saying that in the very near future, they want to get rid of passwords for the users, okay? So they want to make a combination of using biometrics, for example, to substitute the use of the passwords for the obvious reasons. It's difficult to memorize them all. People get robbed all the time. So I was wondering if blockchain has something to do with that. So, I mean, that's great that we can use biometrics, but where they're gonna be storing our data, right? Our biometric patterns. So I'd like to know more if blockchain would be part of this new revolution of not having passwords anymore and instead having biometrics and other things like this? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Roberta.
Yeah.
It's a very interesting question because actually, in other words, they even go in to collect more information about us.
Yeah, so that is, you should always be wary when the big tech company says they are doing something good.
You know, that's very sorry. Your camera is off, is it?
Oh, sorry. Can you?
Yeah,
There you
oh,
are.
Sorry about that. I did not know what happened. Yeah, I think you should always be wary when the big tech company says they are doing something good. So I know that there is a huge effort going on towards a passwordless system, where it's because it's very sorry, I don't know why my camera keeps going off. Yeah, going towards a passwordless system. I think there is, sorry about that. I don't know, there's some technical challenge. So I think the question about where they're going to store the data, I think it is going to be, if it is going to be, let's say they're going to use the blockchain network to store the data, then definitely it is going to be distributed. I don't know whether, the PII data, how that will be captured and stored by all the big tech companies. If it is stored on the blockchain, yes, it is going to be transparent, but I'm assuming it will be encrypted, and I'm assuming there'll be enough technology or the security layer laid on top of it so that it's not easily hacked and seen. In terms of the blockchain technology, it's usually typically very transparent. You can see that, hey, that a transaction A was done from A to B, this transaction was done, and that is very transparent. But if you add a security layer on top of it to encrypt it and so that you can mask the data, I'm assuming that some kind of that technology will be done to prevent everybody getting access to the whole PII information. It is pretty nascent and new. I don't think there is any proper regulations around it today. I would say keep an eye towards it. It's going to be evolving, how that whole passwordless in a Web 3.0 world is going to come together.
Vinod, to
Yeah.
augment that, if you remember, I was working for UBIS with that company in Boston, and their whole purpose was to create a secure company where you as an individual could create your own blockchain node, put all your data in there, and then you could send that node to anyone as your validation of who you were. And that company did not make it. In fact, I personally believe they were ahead of their time conceptually, but I do believe someone's going to do that.
Yep, totally agreed. Totally agreed. It's coming. Just a matter of time.
Thank you. Vincent.
Thank you. Two thoughts that came to mind, and I want to ask, how do we see the future? Is it going to be a dual track system where there's going to be the Web 3.0 for the geeks and so on, and there's still going to be the traditional infrastructure, especially for the SMEs in the emerging economies, where of course the technology, access, etc., and just capacity issues are going to be involved for doing, they do letters of credit still, some of them still go through banks, very important for their trading, the export credit financing, bricks and mortar type of business traditionally in those industries. So I am hoping that the future for the next 10, 15, 20 years, until that new generation of their kids become the CEOs of their companies, that there will be two systems operating side by side, the blockchain and the modern system as well as the old one. But what I really want to get a sense from you on is the question of traceability. Many of all countries of the world, the issue of Panama Papers, Cayman Islands, BVI, these kinds of countries that are known for, stashing cash, law enforcement, and to what extent will law enforcement be able to break these codes or get access when they will need? I mean, the subpoena will no longer have use if you can't go to the CEO of the bank and insist on opening records of Vinod or Vincent. So I'm just thinking, what does it have to how's that going to impact law enforcement in white collar crime, in money laundering, in proceeds of crime, drug trafficking monies? And of course, you hear about, even now with Web 2.0, you hear about the dark web, you know, and how that is challenging the FBI and the law enforcement, how to access what's going on in the dark web. Are we now really making it more difficult how is it, are there going to be parallel knowledge in law enforcement to work alongside the innovation and the creativity that Web 3.0 brings to the market?
Yeah, so I think there were three questions, if I remember what you asked. First, about the Web 2.0 and 3.0 working together. How do you transition that, right? The way I look at it is 2.0 is not going to go away anywhere. And the reality is, again, this is totally my personal opinion. The reality is that as the 3.0 becomes more and more mature, there will be more cooler features, functions being evolved and developed. The 2.0 companies and the features will start slowly adopting. As an example, NFT, in fact, last week or recently only, I read about how Instagram and Facebook is going to start supporting NFTs, so that in the creator economy, everybody publishing their content on these platforms can make it unique and non-fungible and start selling NFTs, right? What that means is slowly the 2.0 companies or web companies are trying to adopt some of the technologies of 3.0, but one of the core tenet of 3.0 is decentralized, autonomous. But if the 2.0 companies are running it, just doesn't make sense, right? So it will be interesting to see, but there will be slowly an evolution towards that. That's one. And second is 3.0 will become more and more easy for the retail users. Currently, like I said, it's more of a science fiction and a science project married together, right? It's only for the geeks trying to understand. So I think that the changes will come from that side about customer experience. How do you make it easy for the common man to use it? And the 2.0 companies going into more and more of that, right? So that will make it easy, the transition from 2.0 to 3.0. That's one. I think the second question, if I remember correctly, what you asked, Vincent, was about traceability.
Yeah, law enforcement, yeah.
Yeah, right, traceability, right? So I think a lot of people think that specifically in the dark web, a lot of transactions were done using cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin, blockchain, so that the government can't trace who is doing what. That is a myth. Currently, that's a myth, because if you look at it, the blockchain exactly records every transaction from to. And at least interestingly, in the US and in a lot of other countries in the world, there are exchanges. You have to register at the exchange to do a blockchain transaction or a Bitcoin transaction. That exchanges know who you are. They do the KYC. So even though it is, so it's a very hybrid system currently, the way it is designed, right? So if you look at, to your point, if you look at what the government regulations are doing, and there's a lot of hackers trying to hack into government systems and holding them ransom, but government is able to trace it down, track it down, who is doing what, and crack it. So with enough technology out there, you can do tracing and you can track who is doing what in the blockchain network. That's the second question I think you had. I forget. So was your third question around the same thing, or okay, did I answer both? Okay, good. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Vincent, for the question. Vinod, we have one question from Stephen in the chat box where you mentioned this NFT and the uniqueness, right, of that. And the question is that how can this be, unique, since you were able to replicate that collage, for the purposes of this presentation? And so could you tell us a bit more about this? And
yeah, So very good question, because I was thinking of the same thing originally when I started exploring into this world, but I copied and pasted the image, but that is not the original one. The original one is authenticated by a blockchain network or a transaction, right? So there is an ID that says, hey, this is verified, similar to verified by Visa, or sometimes you see that, right? Like there is a Web 3.0 technology used behind the scene to verify it. Like the collage that I shared is just a replicate of that or an image of that, but the actual ones, the digital version of that, there is a way to authenticate that. It will have a unique ID, and that ID is verified by this whole blockchain network. So yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, I believe that this digital online art is basically traded and created on the same principles, right?
Absolutely. That is the reason why it is unique and why there are like limited copies, or like, because there's a demand for that and it becomes unique. You cannot replicate it. You can take a picture, you can make a snapshot, screenshot, but the original digital asset is just one.
So that kind of brings us back to some contradiction. We are talking about decentralization. We are talking about everybody being, an authority on his or her own. On the other hand, we talk about the necessity of regulations. We talk about this blockchain authority unit, or, whatever we call that, in order to verify, in order to certify, and so on and so forth. So what about this contradiction? Is it going to be autonomous and absolutely, governed by the majority democracy in action, or still we would need the power and send quite, the body and the unit of authority?
Yeah. So I would say, Dr. Tony, that it's a healthy friction between the two. That on one side there is a pull towards autonomy, decentralization. We don't want the government to interfere. On the other side, to protect the larger, the common man and the retail, there is regulations, there is centralization, there is some kind of a governance or authority there. The reality is somewhere in between, and I don't know where exactly on the scale it will lie, but reality is somewhere in between. And I think that is where the world is going to end up in, right? So it's going to be a hybrid approach. Web3 is definitely pushing the limit to the one side, whereas on the other side, the reality will be somewhere in the middle, where there will be some kind of a regulation, some kind of a governance to avoid chaos. And otherwise the common man will always get the short end of the stick. Like Kathy was saying, the rich people will always figure out how to make it work, but the common man will always suffer because of that.
Yes, that's very true. I have a quite interesting comment from Yi-Chan. Yi-Chan, can you hear me if you would like to tell us?
Yes, can you hear me? Sorry, I'm not really capable to show my image. Yeah, I'm just very curious, because I am actually holding some crypto myself. And I had a very interesting past 5 years. I don't know how many of you feel the same. It was kind of a roller coaster.
Yi-Chan, I'm very sorry. The sound is really bad. I'm sorry. If you wish, I would rather read about that. I mean, read from the chat box, your comment, right? So you're asking about emerging markets getting benefits from decentralized finance. You can see that, right?
Sorry, I'm trying to look at, is it the latest question or where is it?
So that's 1641. Asked at 1641 in the chat box.
Yeah. Marginalized places that are not equipped with strong network, how to mitigate that. Tend to carry equally small. Yeah, I think this is absolutely true that, like I said at the beginning, only Web 3.0 is more a revolution for the backend, which means there has to be strong infrastructure. And you are right that if the infrastructure is not there, it will marginalize those people without that. But at the same time, most of these infrastructure are global, like, you create in one place and it's available for everybody. But the minimum requirement is definitely the internet connection and a faster internet connection, right? So once you have that connectivity, then it becomes easier. But this is one of the challenges, right? Actually, if you go to that website I said earlier about Web 3 is going good, you will read that we say that, hey, this is for the common man and it's free, but to even participate in Web 3.0 today, you need to have a server, you need to have connections, and then that things cost money. It's almost like $5-10 per month in US you have to pay. So it is not there yet. I hope things will become easier to access for everybody in the world, but that's not where we are. Hopefully we are trending or going towards that direction in a few years.
Interesting, thank you. I have one more question. Like, following Patricia's comment about the traits and personal traits of people, the community included. I mean, if the regulations are lifted, wouldn't be the space, the internet, Web 3.0, kind of overfilled with a hatred and, with quite nasty comments and remarks? I mean, because the other thing that it's going to be more and more difficult to track back, right, to the person who actually posted that or initiated something. So what do you think about that? What do you think about those boundaries? And
yeah, unfortunately, that is the reality, that there's a lot of hatred, a lot of negativity on the web. And that is what Web 2.0 is, exactly that today. If you look at all the social media network, if you post anything, there'll be 20 people coming after you about how terrible of a person you are and doing personal attacks and negative. I have hope that things will change. It's not only the regulations, but I think the fact about traceability and people, that who you are and you can trace it back to that person, maybe is a better way. Most people are putting hatred on the web because it's anonymous. And I'm hoping that with web, there is some kind of a mechanism by which you can out the person and there's complete traceability. And hopefully since it's more democratized, there will be a larger set of people who are good and positive minded that will overcome the people who are negative. That's all. I mean, it's a wishful thinking. That's what I'm hoping. I don't know where it's going to end up.
right, yes, okay, we are all going to find it out sooner or later.
Yeah.
That's the reality. A couple more questions. Okay, so Matt is asking you to provide a case of fintech in the field of tourism or hospitality. 1726 in the chat box.
Case of hospitality and tourism. That's interesting. I guess, I try to connect everything into fintech. Like even in tourism and hospitality, there is always payment and transactions. That is one place where I've seen that you can, it doesn't matter which state you are or where you live, but you can always end up paying through Bitcoin or one of these cryptocurrencies. That's one. Second is also verifying, there are a lot of agents or brokers trying to sell you into tickets and other places for tourism. You can get rid of those middlemen or have an authenticated or verifiable person doing that kind of transaction, right? Like, hey, that they are pretty credible person who is selling tickets to a hospitality event or a place or a location. Those are some of the use cases that come to my mind. I don't know if there are others in this forum who has better examples. I don't know if anybody.
Thank you. Thank you,
Okay.
Vinod.
Thank you very much. Final question, Vinod, and I would ask Shelter. Shelter, you've been very active, posting many questions in the chat box. I hope that most of them were answered. So would you ask the final one about Africa? Would you like to ask it yourself, Shelter?
Okay, thank you, Dr. Santilova, for the opportunity to engage. Thank you, Vinod, for such a very wonderful presentation and insightful, information about blockchain, Web 3.0, and the rest. I am actually speaking from Africa, and I think it is because of the strength and the power of the internet that I'm able to reach you. You're also able to reach me, and we're all able to talk to each other from different parts of the world. What we know in history is new technologies tend to push some of us, particularly those of us in Africa, push us to the background. And then it takes a long time for us to catch up. And catching up takes a lot of effort. Sometimes it affects our development, it affects our exposure to other parts of the world. The blockchain issue is quite interesting. I'd like to know how would you advise us, those of us in Africa this time, to ensure that we are not left out in this race for Web3, blockchain, and the rest. We will definitely would like to be to have a place at the table to also participate in the world economy and also find a place for our future. And so I'd like to know, how would you advise us to take advantage of the opportunities to set up, warehouses of data, warehouses, and the rest to ensure that we are not left out? Thank you very much.
Sure, happy to answer. My personal, again, take is education is a big area where if the government of Africa or in general can help their, their citizens to be participate in getting more educated and knowledge. And one of the way by which they can participate in the world economy is if you have a verifiable degree, things like micro degrees or nano degrees that UBIS offer as an example, or others. So you can, and that is verifiable by the blockchain network, or so that, hey, this person is a skilled at certain job or a function, and that can be verified, right, at a global level. So it's not only, so that way you're creating a pathway by which the citizens of a country can participate at a global level at an equal level footing. And I think that makes a huge difference. In addition to that, of course, by adopting some of the, at least the government can do a lot, I think, by adopting some of these technologies. Like I said, for example, the land parcel or tracking of land, so that, when people are buying and selling properties, like, you don't need escrow companies, you don't need to verify, that, hey, this person owns this transaction. There is the middleman cannot steal things. There can be less corruption if you bring in transparency into that whole equation, right, by using this technology. So at a government level, if you adopt some of these, it might change and create a better outcome for everybody, I think.
Maybe one way you could answer that also is, what are the top 3 to 5 software languages that most of blockchain is written in? And then are there other kinds of roles that you see emerging that our students on this phone call might be interested in exploring for their own career?
So, most, the blockchain, I mean, again, it's not different than other programming language, Python, C++. C++ is probably more common in creating blockchain technology or network, I would say. Any other scripting language also, it's very common. Kathy, what was the other question? Oh, what kind of?
I mean, most of the people on the phone are not going to become programming engineers. So what other areas should they start to think about? I mean, one of the things that I jotted down today based on your talk is that there's a real need for regulatory specialists around these new technologies. So that might be an area that our students here today on the phone might be interested in exploring for their own future.
Yeah, so I think in general, right, there will be a dire need for people to understand that whole Web 3.0 technology, blockchain, cryptocurrency, right? So educating yourself to even understand the technology, because once you understand what are the capabilities of the technology, and then it doesn't matter which field you are in, whether you're in medical profession or retail or financial services, you can figure out, you will be able to connect the dots on your own to solve certain business problems on your own by leveraging the technology. So I would strongly recommend everybody, if there's a certificate course about, and either blockchain, crypto, NFT, DAO, how do you get basically educated in terms of all these technologies? That is very important. I think that is a fundamental part. I mean, they might sound jargons to it, but once you're aware of it, learn it, then all of you can become entrepreneurs on your own by connecting the other business problems in your day-to-day life. That's what I would strongly recommend.
Thank you, Vinod, very much. Thank you for these recommendations as well. And every time I hear that actually the best remedy is education, makes me feel really happy, and particularly happy since UBIS is contributing to that, contributing to technology literacy, to education of people around the world. Please do check the number of courses, microcredit courses that we offer as well. So there should be information on our website, and just continue working on your brains, on your cognitive abilities, as well as emotional intelligence. I think like these two things go in parallel, and nowadays more than ever. And otherwise, we'll be fine. We will all be fine, right? With no matter which way the internet will evolve. Again, we're not panickers. Thank you very much for this wonderful presentation. You can find a lot of flattering comments in the chat box. We absolutely loved it. Thank you for joining us, and everyone, take care of yourselves and your loved ones, and I see you soon. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Congrats to Manisha as well.
Thank you, Vinod.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, Vinod.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you.
Bye, everybody. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.